Hi, welcome to week 2 of Guiding Behavior. This week we're exploring the importance of building trusting relationships with each and every one of your students, especially those students who are most likely to have challenging behaviors in your classroom. So I want to introduce you to, the words are backwards, this textbook. So last week we read from our Guiding Behavior textbook. This textbook, The Emotional Life of the Toddler, is a non-traditional choice to include in this class. And for a lot of you, you don't plan to actually work with toddlers. So you might wonder why I've chosen this book. The reason I've chosen it is I think it does a really great job explaining the emotional life of young children. So it's focused on the toddler, but so much of what she it's interesting because the book is actually focused on the toddler from the written to parents, so people who are parents of toddlers. But she does such a great job explaining why toddlers behave how they behave, and most of what she says is applicable both to kids that are older than toddlers, and also what she describes about parents is actually applicable to teachers as well. So as you're reading this book, I encourage you to really let go of the label of toddler and let go of the label of parent, and really think about how this information applies to the kids that are the age that you plan to teach in their relationship with you as their teacher. Okay, so you're gonna have to kind of suspend, you're gonna have to kind of trust me there that what she's saying also is gonna relate to your own work. She just does a really good job explaining the importance of relationship and the idea of temperament, and that different children are different than each other and are gonna react to the stimulus in your classroom differently. Some kids can handle a busy environment and thrive off of it, and some can't. And so she just does a really good job of explaining human behavior, I think. And I find it readable, and I hope that you do too. So that's why we're using this book. So we're going to kind of go back and forth between the Guiding Behavior book that you read for last week and The Emotional Life of the Toddler. And I'm hoping those of you who are parents and do have young children will find it useful in your own life as well. I certainly do. So, okay, so that's that book. And the reason we're going to focus so much on relationship and the emotional life of children is that children who misbehave in the classroom, so there's misbehavior, and there's also this phrase called mistaken behavior that's popular in early childhood education, and that's sort of to take the negative connotations out of the idea of misbehavior. It's not that it's misbehavior, it's that the child just mistaken. It's a mistake, and just like with any other mistake, we want to give kids the benefit of the doubt and give them some grace around that. And so there's this phrase, mistaken behavior. So I might use that throughout this course as well, mistaken behavior. So mistaken behavior is often caused by kids who don't trust the world. So one of the things that happens in the first 3 years of life, during the infancy period, which is what this book is focused on, this is focused on ages 1, 2, and 3. The emotional task of the first 3 years of life is to determine whether the world is a place you can trust or mistrust. So there's a theorist named Erik Erikson, and he worked with the specific task that happens at different periods of your life. So during the first 3 years of your life, your task is to determine whether you're going to be trustful or mistrustful. Children who aren't well taken care of by their environment and the people in it learn to mistrust the world. And children who mistrust the world are going to grow into older children who behave in ways that are counterproductive in the classroom. Those are the kids that have mistaken behavior. So it's just really important to understand this period of a child's life and learn about what they're learning about the world from the beginning, because it's going to influence how they act in your classroom later on. So we're going to focus this week on the attachment theory We'll get into that. You'll get plenty of detail about that. The type of attachment theory that a child forms in their infancy period, ages birth to 3, affects their behavior for like the rest of their life, because that's the type of attachment they have with their primary caregiver tells them whether the world can be trusted or mistrusted. And a child who mistrusts the world does not is more likely to exhibit mistaken behavior. Okay, so that's the significance. That's where we're starting here. So I know a lot of you are like, okay, but what do I do? Well, what you do is you understand why kids behave how they do, and the better you understand their underlying motivations for their behavior. Include in one of those underlying motivations is that they don't trust the world, and that's why they're acting like that. The more you can understand that, the better and more focused your eventual intervention will be. Okay, so we're going to get to what you do as a classroom teacher, but first you have to understand why kids act how they do. Okay, and so that's the focus of this module. Okay, another thing that I want you to tell you about is we're going to talk about, the book is going to assume that you know what a secure base is. Hopefully in your child development course you learned about secure base behavior, and those of you who just took infant toddler care with me hopefully remember what secure base behavior is, but I will state it again now for those who don't know. So if you've spent time with a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old, either as a parent or a caregiver, you have probably had the experience of you're sitting in a room with that child and they sit with you for comfort, right? That you first enter a space and they're maybe kind of feeling kind of shy. They sit with you, then they get up and they go explore whatever they want to explore, and then they come back to you. And they go out and explore, and then they come back to you. Maybe that child has stood up to explore, you stand up and think you're going to leave the room, but that child sees that you're standing up to leave that room and they're like, no, and they run to you. Because even though they weren't physically on you in that moment, you sitting there, stable, not moving, they know where you are, was providing them a base of support, a secure base. When you're there, they feel secure even though they're not touching you, right? Have you had that experience? You leave the room and the kid's like crying. I just had that this evening. We have a back building where I used to have my childcare program. My husband's back there with some friends. I brought the girls out to say hi, and then I was going to come in and quick make their dinner. But I guess when I left, their dad was there. So like the secure base transferred from me to their dad, right? He's a secure attachment figure. But then and they were playing underneath the table. He stood up to leave the table, and I guess Ruby like lost it. Was like, like, so she was under the table with a bunch of people she didn't know who were sitting all around it, and her dad and her mom were not there anymore. So she was fine. She wasn't touching us. We weren't even aware that she needed us. But when we were close to her, we were her secure base. And as soon as my husband and I left, she was like, I've got no secure base. And she totally just like started screaming and crying. So that's what a secure base is. They've learned to trust you. When you're there, they feel safe. When you're not there anymore, they don't feel safe anymore. So that's what a secure base is. Now, kids in childcare or who are taken care of by other people can acquire other secure bases, right? So like their first couple days in childcare are really hard, but then they attach to one of the teachers, and then that teacher can be their secure base, right? So it's not just the mom and the dad, or the mom and the mom, or the dad and the dad. It is whomever that child learns that they can trust. Okay? So that's what a secure base is. Great. Okay, so this is a 9-minute video so far. I'm going to cut it off here. Dig into this material. It's a lot of information. I tried to kind of throw a lot at you, but your final assignment is going to take what you've absorbed through the readings and apply it to an actual case study. So at that point, I'll be able to tell if I gave you the right information to understand what I want you to understand. But basically, I'll just say that my goal is for you to understand attachment theory well enough that when you interact with a child in the future, not that you could necessarily name what type of attachment that they have, but you could interpret their behavior as perhaps somebody who did not receive responsive care when they were younger. And that can kind of alter your intervention, right? Because if a child is behaving in such a way, like say at 6 years old, that tells you that maybe they have not experienced a secure attachment. You're going to get a video about what exactly that is. But you can just know an attachment that they have not interacted with someone who is consistently responsive to them in a loving way. Okay? A child who hasn't had that experience and then is acting up in your classroom, if you think about that child in terms of, oh, this is someone who did not receive responsive care from a caregiver when they were younger because their parent wasn't able to for whatever reason, I think that you'll be less likely to punish that child and more likely to be compassionate with that child, right? Because how could you hold a 6-year-old responsible for the fact that they didn't receive great care when they were younger? You know, you wouldn't. You would be compassionate and, oh gosh, how can I give them some good care now? Okay, that's my goal for this module. Okay, that's it. Thanks. Bye.